What's happening? Man, I don't know if I have the energy for this one after two IRL streams yesterday. And hell, I think we and a morning stream. Goodness gracious. Just chilling, man. It's hot. It's hot and muggy. Figured I'd see who's around and see either this or it's way too early in the day to try to take a nap. And I think I'm on my earbuds. I'm not really sure. I installed some kind of app, but I think on the second stream, the second IRL stream, I think on the first stream we had the earbuds for the mic, and I think maybe on the second stream we didn't. So I don't fucking know. Um, but good thing this ain't smell-o-vision. No, I'm kidding. But had a blast. But that was a lot of energy, man. A lot of energy. I don't drink beer very often, but I think that beer must have gave me a lot of energy. So good lord. Time for a shower, man. Look at this hair, dude. This is crazy. How about that? Maybe not. What y'all up to? Thank you for clicking the like button. Much appreciated, as always. Talked to my mama earlier for an hour and a half. That's actually not that she makes me tired, but that was even more output. So here I am yapping again. So bear with me if the royal we takes a nap. Or maybe it's not quite as energetic as normal. Man, this Charlie Kirk stuff's beating me down. It seems like half the thumbnails I see in my feed is Charlie Kirk, or I'll click on something and I don't think it's going to be about Charlie Kirk, and the next thing you know, they're talking about Charlie Kirk. That steel toe Aaron Imholt talking about more people going to church on the heels of this temporarily, and that's a very American thing, right? Oh, we better get to church because of Charlie Kirk. Isn't that some version of the New Year's Day, the New Year's resolution? And somebody who used to hit the weights real hard, it was always annoying every year when the waiting for the New Year's resolution folks to quit the gym. So well, not that I'm a churchgoer to be annoyed, but I suspect the much the same with waiting for the churchgoers to stop going to church, right? Go back to their old ways. And why don't people know that's kind of like their motivation? I just don't understand. Does it feel like the right thing? And assuming that's even happening, right? I have to think that it is. What do y'all think? And obviously it's fucked up anytime a wife becomes a widow and children are going to be raised without a father. Although maybe I guess they're probably going to be financially secure, presumably, but they would have been anyway. So better to be financially secure with a father and a husband than without, right? And I can't get into the details of whatever's going on, uh, with the actual crime and event and assassination, and then I don't even read most of these articles, but I'm seeing all these Drudge Report headlines, and I can't even bring myself to try to read the Citizen Free Press right now. Just seeing Jesse on Fire's thumbnails is enough. I'm following the zeitgeist more through Jesse on Fire because I use him to casually follow MMA because I have a casual interest in certain sports, boxing, MMA, other sports, and I've got a channel I follow for college football, but even that's not that interesting. Oh, I have an article I want to read y'all. This is fucked up, actually. This will get me energized because I went to University of Arkansas, and I don't want to get into the famous grandfather stuff, so we'll forget about that. But he was a big fucking deal there at Arkansas, and was a football and basketball player, and man, I read an article about this NIL, this name, image, and likeness. And Arkansas was known historically for like the old Southwest Conference was known to be real big cheaters in football. Paying the players, and SMU got put on the death penalty and all of this. And it's kind of known that Arkansas was competitive even without cheating. And it says here, Arkansas athletic director says Hogs looking to venture over to the dark side. And this is some version of, this idea of, well, the enemy is, it's an arms race between us and the enemy. So, we have morals in a vacuum, but since the enemy doesn't, we have to go ahead and get rid of our morals. And then what does that do to society at large? Hunter Yurachek openly admits Razorbacks considering driving in shady third lane of NIL world. Arkansas Athletics Director Hunter Yurachek, and if this isn't interesting, come back later, but I'll find a way to make it interesting, I'm sure. I haven't even read the article yet, but I copied and pasted into my notes app. Dropped a bomb at the Little Rock Touchdown Clubs, announcing Razorback Athletics is considering venturing into the third lane of NIL, a visual coined by Yurachek, where programs go out of their way to play on the shady side of the NIL world. And again, this is under the auspices that Arkansas used to choose to have a higher moral standard, arguably, than the conference they used to play in. Until we get our college athletics NIL enforcement agency up and running, you're going to continue to have schools operating in that third lane, and that's a bad place to be, in my opinion, Yurachek said. It's bad for college athletics. I don't want to operate there. So he doesn't want to do the wrong thing. But to be competitive, what he means by that is to keep his job. I don't want to operate there, but to be competitive, we may have to figure out what that third lane looks like for the University of Arkansas. And lest we forget, University of Arkansas has access to big money because of Walmart, Tyson Foods, and all these other corporations in the area. They got a lot of big donors, and former players too. As even Jerry Jones was, played on the Arkansas 1964 national championship team, a literal, a billionaire. As he wandered over to be part of an interview with former Arkansas superstar David Basil, he openly opined that's probably going to go national. However, there was nothing about his tone or demeanor that indicated he cares in that regard anymore. Yeah, it's like, all right, man, just whatever we got to do to win, just win, baby. Morals and integrity out the window. Yurachek described this point in time as a moment where they are all still trying to get the speed limit signs up, and everyone knows there are no cops on the road to enforce the ones that are up. Meanwhile, athletics in general would have been one of the major ways that, especially the young males, it would have been, pardon the nose picking, it would have been emphasized, these notions of, well, integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's watching, right? When there's no cops on the roads. Yurachek described this point in time as a moment. Never mind. Let's all raise our hands, Yurachek said. If you're driving down I-40 and the speed limit is 55, but a state trooper is not going to be out that day, how many of us are going to go 65? Oh, okay. The Arkansas AD pushed back on the idea the Razorbacks have been unable to compete, citing how much better the athletics program is in all other sports outside of football than the rest of the SEC. And I want to point out, where I'm from in the South, nobody gives a fuck about anything but football. So it's like, oh, fastest retard in the Special Olympics. Good for you, buddy. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. It's football. Nobody cares about anything but football. Maybe basketball, maybe. From the standpoint of the big three, he said he feels basketball, blah, 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 I don't care. However, he knows, and I'm a huge basketball fan, but Razorbacks are never going to do anything in football or basketball ever again. However, he knows so many people care about football and freely admitted this is the one sport that is not positioned to hold the number one ranking or win at least an SEC championship. And I want to point out that Arkansas actually kicked off this conference realignment in the late 80s and early 90s by leaving one conference to join the SEC. And Arkansas won the last two Southwest Conference championships. And Arkansas has never and will never win a conference championship in the SEC. Right. Never going to fucking happen. And I'm not being negative. This is just reality. It's never going to happen. Just like we had this coach, Chad Morris, and I said at a certain point, I said he's never even going to win one game in the SEC. And I was right. It's never going to happen. This is never going to happen. And he said Juracek attributed that directly to money. He said when he arrived, he found a budget of 120 million, which is nothing in today's money. Inflation, anyone? And wondered how he would spend all of that money after coming from a group of 5 school in Houston. See, Houston ain't got no money. Houston had, they have big sports there. Houston Cougars don't have any money. And in fact, it wasn't that long ago that Arkansas was considered like one of the biggest, most valuable football schools, actually, the total value of the program. Now he oversees a budget of 180 million and looks across a giant gulf at fellow SEC schools he says have 300 million in their operating budget, while he cuts back on athletes getting to attend summer school classes and cutting positions within his offices. In Arkansas, some people may not know, all this crazy like lefty, diversity, and we got to be touchy-feely, and like all of that has invaded the entire university and even the athletics. Like you see Arkansas Razorbacks fans everywhere in the state of Arkansas. You see Razorbacks on people's cars. You see it on their houses everywhere but Fayetteville. When you go to the city where the university is, they're not into it anymore, man. They're just not into it. They're a bunch of lefty bozos. And it's, what's football associated with? Toxic masculinity, aggression. Thank you again for clicking the like button. I do appreciate that the audience is happy to freely give to the broadcast, and it certainly costs nothing to click the button. So thank you. But it's the biggest thing in the state, except in the city where the university is. They don't give a fuck. And I know because I used to live there and I was homeless there. They don't care. And I went to college there. It was gigantic when I was in college. Huge. So why would people pay for this? It doesn't even make sense. And the university's cutting back. This is why the Hogs are looking to step a toe into the gray areas of NIL. One example he gave is how other schools have reimagined how shoe contracts are done. Reimagined. Shoe deal money is now being used to endorse, and I can only imagine my grandfather rolling over in his grave. Shoe deal money is now being used to endorse student athletes from NIL agreements, if that makes sense. And I could have told you all of this. Like, I don't need an article to tell me this. If that makes sense, where the shoe companies are now going to be, instead of funneling the money directly to the schools, now they're going to be entering into an agreement with student athletes. So does that mean you're going to have, different players on the team with different brands of shoes, maybe? Because before it used to be like everybody had to wear the same shoes, same, brand. Now they're going to be entering blah, blah, blah. Juracek said technically shoe companies already had that agreement then. And I'm against all this. Why should the university be able to turn it into a business and, everybody make money but the athletes? I think it should be nobody makes money under the old model. Just don't let anybody make money. Why can't you have pure athletics, right? Well, as we know, in this vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, everything's a business, and nothing's going to be allowed to have any purity whatsoever in this place, right? And so the schools that have money are trying to find ways to continue to get that money to their student athletes so that they don't lose their competitive advantage. Meanwhile, what leverage does this give the student athlete? Now the student athlete could be like, hey, man, if y'all don't give me the money and pay me and play me, if I don't get to play, then mommy's going to show up whining and crying to the athletic director, and then they're going to transfer, Your check yearns for an NFL model. Yeah, just turn it into the NFL, I guess, where teams must stick to a salary cap alongside an NIL model that has agents getting commercial deals for their clients at above the table market rates. He says that would be ideal and settle college athletics into a more competitive state, but also indicated schools that are winning aren't going to give up their competitive advantage for the good of all. Meanwhile, I'll tell you who's doing really good that's unexpected is Vanderbilt, which historically wasn't that competitive because it's a difficult university to get into. And Stanford, used to be good every once in a while, even though it's hard to get into. So why wouldn't the actual smart kids, now that Vanderbilt can pay them, why wouldn't they go to Vanderbilt? It's like, hey man, I got half a brain. I want to go study. I want to go study, actually learn something and study engineering. Why wouldn't they go to Vanderbilt? Meanwhile, Arkansas is one of the worst schools for academics. It's easy to get into, and I don't know if you guys know this. In the South, man, the entirety of the South, we don't even take the SATs. I don't know if you know this. No SATs unless you just want to. Arkansas, laughably easy to get into, and academics is really not even the point unless a person's going into business school maybe, or wants to study poultry science. Specific things are good. Um, if in our industry we would stick to the revenue sharing piece and allowing student athletes and their agents, why even call them student athletes anymore? Why do they even know to go to school at this point, right? And their agents and their parents, whomever wants to go out and negotiate legitimate NIL agreements, college athletics would really be in a great spot. What? But we've already ventured out into this third lane where schools are figuring out new ways to provide that revenue. Meanwhile, why would the student athlete even care if the school wins? Except that they need to try to make an NFL. Now they need to make more money in the NFL. Why would I even care if I'm going to go to the highest bidder, as some sort of college football athlete? Why would I give a fuck if we actually win? And it is some version of Enron with mark-to-market accounting. They signed the deal with the government of India, and now they get to claim, to build a power plant, and they project out what the earnings are going to be. And now they get to claim 10 years of profits day one on their books. And now it's like, hey, why even complete the second and third phase why bother to complete the second and third phase of the power plant, since we've already claimed the profits? The motivation is gone. Same thing with football. Why bother to actually go win on the field? Other than the fact that the coach has to keep his job, the AD has to keep his job. Hey, you're gonna start seeing. I'm calling it right now. You're going to start seeing women athletic directors and women college football coaches, because at the point at which it no longer matters if they win or not, meaning the coaches aren't going to be able to crack that whip. The coach can't discipline the players anymore. They'll just transfer. And if they're actually good on the field, that's the only motivator for the football player to be any good on the field, is to actually put up good numbers, right? And at certain positions, they're probably going to put up good numbers. Meanwhile, have y'all seen this thing with Arch Manning, like the nephew of Peyton and Eli Manning? He's fucking dog shit. And they anointed him the chosen one, and they said he was like the front runner for the Heisman Trophy. He's fucking terrible. And who even knows how many millions Texas is paying him? This world is, between this and the Charlie Kirk stuff, this thing is completely off the fucking rails. What's up, Pale Horse Rider? Good to see you. He says, makes zero sense to me how athletes make all this money in pro sports. I get it, TV deals, blah, 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 but all my friends stream these games for free. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. It made sense under the network and cable TV model. And if folks have forgotten, it used to be the networks got everything. And Notre Dame, one of the reasons they would never join a football conference, that BJ Investigates is live. I kind of want to watch that. She's talking about no jumper and all kind of human trafficking, but I can't really listen to her live, but I like her a lot. And what was I saying? Let me see. So what happened was, here's how the money really flowed into college athletics. So back in the day, I'll give you an example, man. I'll break this down as best I can. So Arkansas was really fucking good in college basketball in this, like in the 70s into the 80s, and Karl Malone and Scottie Pippen grew up like within 50 miles of each other, even though Karl Malone's from Louisiana, and he was this huge recruit, and he was gonna go. The story goes he was gonna go to University of Arkansas, but then and I forget where he went. I don't even remember where he went. Louisiana Tech, who has no basketball tradition for men. They had one for women. So he ended up going to Louisiana Tech, and they said, well, they bought him a Corvette. So, yeah, there was money being used, but it was some booster somewhere. It was literally a guy with a car dealership. It was a dude with a chain of car dealerships that said, fuck it, we'll put dealer plates on a Corvette for Karl Malone, and he'll go to Louisiana Tech. And then meanwhile, Scottie Pippen supposedly came out of nowhere, went to Central Arkansas and was like the trainer, and then somehow went from like 6 foot to like 6'7" fucking while he was in college, and you know became like this great NBA player. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, Blue Chips is a really good movie. Pale Horse Rider. You have Karl Malone, another Chester. Oh yeah, man. And I think if you look at his guns, especially them, he had them big shoulders and them big fucking delts. I think half of that was so he could fucking beat everybody up that would tell him what to do, tell him not to be trying to bang a 13-year-old. And you know what they wrote about him? And I read an article about him when he retired in Utah. They said he was known for getting out on the interstate in Salt Lake on his Harley, and he wouldn't let anybody pass him. He said he'd be out there. Imagine being 6 foot motherfucking 8 with just muscled up, and your ego is so fucked up. You got to get on that fucking interstate, and you can't let nobody pass you. Right? It's crazy, man. What's wrong with these people? But let me get back to the athletics. And these flies know when you're distracted. They know when you can't pay them no attention. These flies is all over me. They know when you can't pay them no mind. So then it gradually became, well, now Nike can get the fucking contract to provide the shoes, and they put the Nike swoosh, and then Reebok's going to come in with a certain amount of money, but the players aren't going to get any of that. But then the boosters can donate. They can donate all this money to the school. And, Sam Walton's brother he wrote a check to build the, state-of-the-art basketball arena on the campus at University of Arkansas, $25 million. Well, he gave 15 of the 25, so it's stepped up, and it's stepped up, and it's stepped up, and it's stepped up. And, it's incrementalism. Nobody really notices. And then, actually it was court cases that made it to where it was actually video games, and the O'Bannon brothers, Charles and Ed O'Bannon, who went to UCLA, they noticed that their name, image, and likeness was used in a video game, and they sued. And the court case was taking so long, and at a certain point it became clear that they were going to prevail. So the NCAA at that point said, fuck it, just let them all get paid, but didn't make any rules. It was just like, okay, it's okay to pay them now. But it was originally designed to say that the advertiser could just be like, hey, there's a badass college football running back like a Reggie Bush who had his Heisman Trophy taken away. Remember, Reggie Bush at USC, they said, hey, man, we're just going to give you all this money. And he took the money, and they took his Heisman Trophy away. So that's somehow he's expected to have morals because he's not a corporation, and he wasn't allowed to be a business, right? But now that he's allowed to form his own corporation, or, the new, his son in a few years or whatever, now that they can turn that into a business, now all of a sudden it's completely fine. Like, what's the fucking difference, bro? Yeah, Karl Malone. Yeah, it's insane. I've never met him in person, but I could only imagine. Meanwhile, I got uncles his size, not as tall, but I got uncles as wider than he was. It's crazy. I don't know if they had their muscles. Might not have them muscles though. Probably weren't quite as muscular. Oh, okay. I don't know. What do I do for a living? Your mama? Your mama? Holy brother. That's funny. I do your mama for a living. But But yeah, so the TV money, that was the first big money to come in. So the SEC famously got this like $1 billion TV deal, and that sort of set the stage for the whole thing. And then Notre Dame never joined a conference because they had their own TV deal with NBC, right? And that was the first, like, hey, Notre Dame as a university got millions of dollars in the 80s for their own TV deal. And so you could only watch Notre Dame on NBA, on NBC, and none of this stuff was on ESPN. And that's why they started NFL started the Thursday night games, and then college started playing on Thursday night, and then college started playing on Friday night. And that was to gradually get like, oh, ESPN2, Arkansas is going to play Ole Miss or whoever on Thursday night. And they would do that so that the cable TV networks got involved. And then as we see, that's morphed into streaming. And then the streaming money got so big that if I actually like to watch NFL, like, how do you even watch NFL anymore? Do you have to just buy like the Sunday ticket? Do you have to just buy the whole season now? And did the NFL as a business, which is a racket, I don't know if y'all know this, the NFL is allowed, it has a legal exception where it gets to run as a racket. It's technically RICO, right? The NFL technically violates RICO, and the government gave them an exception. They operate under antitrust law, or it's technically it's against the antitrust laws, right? So it's operated at the level of, if they weren't given an exception by the feds, that they could reasonably be prosecuted under RICO. The fucking NFL as it exists. But, you're going to tell me, holy brother, that I'm supposed to come out here and earn a specific type of living, doing something other than riding your mama for a living, right? And it don't pay well, but it pays the bills anyway. And, she likes it when I make her squeal like a pig. So, we got that going for us. I put in the earplugs, of course. I ain't really trying to hear all that. But, she tips for that. So, hey, whatever it takes to pay the bills, right? Holy brother. Whatever gets the pot farm, whatever gets the next year's pot crop in the ground, right? Am I wrong? So, what do I do for a living exactly? Oh man. And yeah, it's all fucked. And I blame Drew for half of it. Drew World Order. I let him kind of talk me out of being interested in sports. But to be honest, I was already sort of losing interest in it. But is there anything, what's even going on in this world that's even worth paying attention to? And again, just let me turn my hotspot on, and we'll just take a gander at Drudge real quick, and just to see what's going on. Wait a minute, not Wi-Fi. Let's see, hotspot. Let's just see what's going on. Oh, I am. It just turned on. Just the fucking news is just off the charts, terrible. Like, I don't even mean bad. I just mean like ridiculously demoralizing. Like, who would even want to be a member of this society? Widow seen weeping over Kirk's body in viral video. It's like, who cares, man? And what is it about? See, I don't have the wiring for this. What is it in people that would want to see that? I don't get it. And people are like, oh, well, don't you have what about you, Benton? I care about Charlie Kirk as much as I cared before. Not at all. Who cares? Like, yeah, it's sad when a woman's widowed and her kids are widowed. I can find somebody if I'm home in Arkansas, I can find somebody in the town, who's been widowed. And I guess I could go to the funeral and just sort of vicariously live through her. Why? What's the attraction to that? And we know that at the level of peer groups and society and sociology, it's because that's whatever the latest and greatest is, everybody rushes towards it. Whatever it is, what everybody else is doing, everybody else just makes a beeline for it. Thank you all for clicking the like, by the way. This is a 13. We got 4 likes and 12 viewings, so that's a good ratio. So thank you all for that. Maybe it'll get even better. Who knows? Pastor rebukes Candace Owens for haunting family with conspiracies. Right. And if people don't understand that this is a collectivist, some version of a communist revolution, I don't know what to tell you. It's like a nouveau communist revolution. Lone assassin theory. And every time there's an event, it says lone assassin theory challenge. That's every time there's an event. There's always reports of multiple, actors. Pride flag ordered at half staff spurs furor. And I don't even, my brain, this has to be trauma. This is trauma-based mind control. I can't even process what this is supposed to be. A pride flag at half staff to honor Charlie Kirk. Trump ordered to lower. My brain can't even figure out what this is supposed to mean. In the queer enclave of West Hollywood, some residents were furious at the sight of a pride flag and a transgender flag lowered to half staff to mourn Charlie Kirk's assassination. Okay, I mean, my brain can't even figure out what is that supposed to be. But here's the commie revolution side. But it's like a fascist collectivism, because if I'm in peer groups and I'm not, that are considered right wing and MAGA, now I'm expected to uphold this latest thing, however it may manifest, and participate in it. And so I must, the Orwellian never-ending series of victories over one's own mind and memory. It's to be able to, without figuring it out, and really doesn't it come down to just do whatever everybody else is doing, regardless of if it makes sense or not? Because my brain can't even figure some of this out. Yeah. Oh, I mean, who cares, dude? And honestly, if people in West Hollywood, which is known as, one of the most, specific cultural contexts there is and has been for all of my life, in 1975, West Hollywood was the version of what it is today. Why would anybody care if the people that live there choose to live a certain type of way? And again, I thought America was about, if people want to congregate in one area and choose how to live, why is that? What's wrong with that? Wouldn't conservatives say we want to be free to, raise our families and live based on our own principles? And what I've learned about flies is if you just continuously make their life hard enough, they will eventually just give up. But, you have to make their life difficult, and then maybe they'll figure it out. But every time I talk for 5 minutes and then they think they can come back. Crazy. And then here, magazine, all the things Charlie said about the gays, but same thing. Why would I care what Charlie Kirk says about? Who cares? Like, why would I care? So now I'm seeing, apparently things are filtering out from TikTok where, especially women and especially black women for some reason are getting all involved in, like, being all excited about him passing away because of these things he said. Like, who cares what he said? How does it affect my life what he said? And then here, now it says trans people to blame for inflation. But then now here it says Charlie Kirk did say stoning gay people was the perfect law, and these other heinous quotes. Meanwhile, my interpretation of the Bible is I don't believe they really stoned people. And that whole idea of, the idea that woman at the well or whatever was going to get stoned for being, a prostitute. See, who were her clientele? I'm pretty sure it was just the law said you got to put her to death. And the Pharisees were trying to catch Jesus in some legalese. So they waited around in the bushes, and hell, they probably sent, they probably engineered it. They probably sent the prostitute in there to run a psyop on him. And then try to trap him into having to either speak out against the law or to uphold the law, see? And then he tricked them by this whole idea of let, whoever amongst you is without sin cast the first stone. And that wasn't even the point of the story. The point of the story was that Jesus averted his gaze and was using his finger to doodle in the dirt, meaning he wasn't seen as actually viewing her. So he, would have had some plausible deniability. And so after he said that and he knew they left, then he looked up and said to the woman, "Hey, woman, where have your accusers gone?" And now she's free to leave, right? That's the point of the story. See, there's really no proof that they would have put her to death for that. Because how was she known as a prostitute in the first place if it's death penalty for prostitution? How did she become known as a prostitute if the first instance of her being known as a prostitute? So how did she get a reputation as a prostitute without being put to death? Doesn't it sort of prove that stoning wasn't a thing in the first place? So this idea of Charlie Kirk saying, "Oh, well, that's the perfect law is to stone people." Yeah, I'm pretty sure they weren't doing it. So what's the difference? Like, what are we even talking about? And I'm just using, again, what seems to be deductive reasoning to say, was this even a thing in the first place? It doesn't seem like it was. Like, what are we talking about on that level? And there's something wrong with the shape of Charlie Kirk's head. And look at, again, be suspicious of any male with eyes that are too close together. Look at this. That's a bad sign, man. But what's wrong with the shape of this? I wouldn't be surprised if, and again, I'm not trying to be rude to anybody, I would be surprised if he was a woman. Or not even entirely real. Like, it looks like a combination of Bert and Ernie. This picture looks like if you combined Bert and Ernie, right? And actually his eyes aren't really too close together, but it's close. It's a little, and mine are too. Mine are almost too close together, but not quite. But in some pictures, it's real noticeable. He's got like one eye is where it's supposed to be, and the other one is just kind of a little too far this way, right? A little too far this way. And mine are close, but thankfully they're not. They're just far enough apart to not be a bad sign. But I'm gonna tell you, man, they are too close together. It just doesn't show on the camera. Yeah, his eyes are too close together. And what's all this space out here on the sides? It's fucking weird, man. So forget about what I said about me. Anyway, I got to calm down. My loud voice is disturbing people again. Can't be talking about Charlie Kirk in public. That's not allowed. Can't do that in America. And then how much of this is just rabble rousing? And what I told y'all again, this is where it's very important, in my opinion. I screenshot all this stuff on my phone. And when I had a computer, I would screenshot all of this and then wait 2 or 3 years and go back and look at your screenshots. And you're like, oh, this is all completely ridiculous. And most of this stuff never happened in the first place. But it seems very real in the moment, doesn't it? Like all of this, oh my God, this rage bait, right? Rage bait. Just imagine and the people getting angry about MAGA vows to silence foes. Again, this is yes, your government is authoritarian, which when the government is authoritarian, and it was authoritarian before the present administration, and it was authoritarian, either way, doesn't matter which party's in there because they're effectively the same party. And so you can't have an authoritarian government without an authoritarian populace, right? And Vance is like, watch your mouth. Well, I won't. I'm gonna say whatever I want to say. Partner, what you gonna do about it? Troops punished over Kirk comments. So, and this is the Orwellian idea of, the troops are fighting and dying for my freedom, but meanwhile, at least 8 troops punished for social media comments about Charlie Kirk's death. So the people who are supposedly keeping us not only free, more free than any humans have ever been in all of human history, well, they're in trouble for not having the right opinions, right, or saying the right thing. And I understand, government property, and they're not really allowed to speak freely. Yeah, I get all of that. Even still. UK TV to air hours-long special on Trump's lies. Nobody cares. We're in a post-truth society, as Drew covered 5 years ago. Shout out to Chalk Body Outline. It's a post-truth. Who cares? It doesn't matter. everybody accepts at this point that whoever the president is a professional liar, and that's just normal. It's just normal to expect that the so-called leader of the free world is going to lie to you. That's just expected. But our guy, and I'm going to tie this in with being from Arkansas. My whole childhood to this day, if I turn on a local radio station in Arkansas, there will be a radio commercial. Teeter the cheater cheats for less. This guy's slogan as a used car dealer is Teeter the cheater, and he cheats you for less. Meaning, yeah, they all cheat you, but he doesn't cheat you as bad. And I'm saying since I was a little kid, and it's a successful business. And he's just telling you, yeah, I'm lying to you. I'm cheating you. So now the system is saying, yeah, whoever the president is lying to you. So you might as well pick who do you want to lie to you, right? You get to pick, if voting's even real, you get to pick who lies to you, right? You know, President the liar lies the best, or what, you know, whatever. Just make a slogan out of it. Longest uninterrupted reel of untruths, falsehood, and distortions ever broadcast on television. Who cares, man? This is what people deserve. It's what they vote for. It's not even vote for. It's what they allow to happen. This is what people deserve. And so I want to tie that into talking to my mama earlier, because, you know, I tend to go off on these spiritual concepts, you know, of what I know about the realm and, you know, unlocking the achievement of true knowledge of self. And she starts panicking at a certain point, and maybe some demonic entities rearing their ugly head. Maybe the demons inside of her are panicking in the face with all this manifesting truth, right? She starts panicking, and she immediately thinks that the way I'm talking, because she applies it to her life, and she imagines what her life would be if she began to subscribe to this particular worldview. Meanwhile, she's the one that raised me in a mind control cult that would not shut the fuck up about the truth. So in a way, I represent to her a version of Frankenstein's monster, and she's Dr. Frankenstein. It's like, hey, you took this undiagnosed fake autistic neurodivergent bozo called your son, and you took him to the Kingdom Hall, and you had him sing songs and learn all this material whereby nobody would ever shut the fuck up about the truth, as if that could even possibly be possessed, which you can't. You can't possess truth. It's not possible. So now, meanwhile, I check in at this Modern Men Lost Again or whatever channel, which I do enjoy some of the time when I'm able to stand it. And, you know, nothing against the channel, but at times I'm just like, I can't listen to this. And they're talking about like Paul enslaved and quoting him, this person in the so-called truth community. It's like, oh, well, I will, basically saying I'll stand, more or less, you know, saying I'll stand with anybody that'll stand with truth. You can't stand with truth or stand up in truth or whatever. It's not possible. Truth is living. Truth is manifest. Truth is in flow. Truth is always moving and growing and evolving and becoming something different each moment. It's never static. It's only ever dynamic and unfolding, or it's not truth. See? So you can't stand in truth, because now that's to create a static image. That's to create something that's frozen in time. And the moment it can be frozen in time, which isn't even possible because that doesn't even exist in the first place, that can't ever be truth. So what he's actually saying is, you know, who's willing to agree with my version of lies? Unless a person is willing to subscribe to my up to the minute version of lies, then we're on team cult. Same thing with this collectivist society. Same thing with this cultural revolution. It's everybody who's willing to subscribe to this, whatever the new moment static version of the truth, you know, the ministry of truth from Orwell's 84 is. And how do people not understand that this is what they're performing? This is a performance. All the world is a stage, and they're performing this. It's all very performative, just like going on social media and watching, you know, Charlie Kirk's widow at the casket. It's all very performative. And then what is the being's, you know, how are other people watching the being interface with all of this, right? That's what it becomes about. And then what is it? It's what I talked about yesterday. It turns into a version of uh, the dear leader, the Kim Jong Un, the dear leader, passes away, and now all the North Koreans have to take to the streets and openly weep long enough, um, or they're in trouble and they have to go off to the political prisoner camp, right? And this America is now that effectively. It's very quickly going to be that. So, if anybody remembers when old Benton was freaking the fuck out doing a podcast called Nightmare Dystopia, and then transitioning into this YouTube channel, and I was freaking the fuck out about possibly being rounded up into a camp. Well, it's a matter of time now, folks. The idea of sleeping in a car and being homeless and not working a job other than working over Holy Brother's mama, right? Outside the context of, giving her whatever she is willing to pay for, then rocking her world as it may be, then it's simply not going to be permitted, right? And what's the difference? So now I'm even incentivized to break the law. So it's like, okay, if and when I go back to truck driving, why wouldn't I do? And meanwhile, at this point, it's probably only going to be able to be on a 1099 contractor pay. Why would I even bother to pretend to pay taxes on that? If they're going to round me up anyway, fuck it. At some point, I'm just going to show up outside the facility and they're going to be like, what are you doing here? I said, I know y'all are putting me in there eventually, so I just figured I'd hang out like, almost like some version of Fight Club. I'm just hanging out, trying to see when y'all are going to let me in. And then I'll just, maybe that's where I'll go to actually be able to ascend up out of this place, right? And then maybe I'll be able to get into segregation. Maybe I'll be able to misbehave and they'll put me in my own, they'll put me in the hole. And I'll be, what was Sean Penn and that dead man walking, dead realm walking. I'll be by myself for the rest of my life, right? Why not? I mean, why not? What else is there to do here? And this is what triggered my mom to panic and go off into all these descriptions of, well, I just want you to have a good life. So, but she means good life defined in relation to this world, see? So to exist, to allow one's identity to be formed in relation to this world of death and these game of lies is to presuppose that there's no left to my own devices. I can't have a good, enjoyable life, right? It's to say, well, the only meaning possible is found within this world. And again, to treat one's blessing as if it were a curse, to say, well, it's the circumstances of one's daily life within this realm that determines if I'm having a good time or not. Oh, well, I just want you to have a good life and enjoy yourself, right? It's like, well, what have I ever done to suggest that that's not the case? Meanwhile, what she's doing is she's taking all of these things I'm telling her and she's imagining what she would feel like, right? And then, see, I won't let people off the hook. So her whole logic depends on the fact that, well, of course, everybody in society is having a good time and they're psychologically whole and they don't have any problems. And certainly the majority of them, and my own mother up until very recently, apparently, they're certainly not on psych meds. They're certainly not on head meds. They're not on, SSRIs or antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication. And meanwhile, when I called her out on it, and she had previously in the conversation, she said that I'm off of it now. And I was like, good, because I could tell last time I saw her in person, I could tell she was on something. Because historically, my mom's very like anxious, guilt-ridden, sort of a prisoner of shame, fear, and guilt. So the last time I was around her, it was like that was removed. So it's like, this isn't even my mother. Like, where's the fear, guilt, and shame? Where's that? Because that version of mom wouldn't have been able to go into a panic around the one I met recently. Last time I saw her in person, that version wouldn't have been able to go into a panic around this information I've been telling her. Right? Just went into a panic and just went off about, well, I don't believe that, and just kept going and going and going. It's like, yo, I understand. I don't need you to believe it, but like it's either true or it's not. Remember, and I didn't remind her, but it's like, yo, you understand that you took me to the Kingdom Hall and they wouldn't shut the fuck up about the truth. So the moment I know that what I'm saying is true, I'm not going to hesitate to let it be known. That's what I was taught from a very young age. Right? Um, you know, Frankenstein's monster. Um, the whole thing's fucked, and you know, and so then I'm like, okay, well, what's the reason for going on the antidepressant? And she's like, oh, it's nothing. It's only 10 milligrams. My doctor said it's nothing, and you can just go off of it anytime you want. You don't even have to step down or wean yourself off of it. And I'm like, yo, that's medical. And I didn't say it to her, but it's like, yo, that's medical coding and billing. That's medical coding and billing. And whatever fine, whatever he's into, whatever fine young thing they send down there, the pharmaceutical drug rep, she's blowing smoke up his ass and romancing the stone around getting him to prescribe these medications. That's all he cares about. You think he gives a flying fuck about if my mom feels some type of way? Why would he? And the corporation can't give a fuck. So even if the human cares, what if the human realizes, oh, it would be better for her not to be on this in the long run? Well, it doesn't matter, because if the corporation says you will prescribe, you will make a certain amount of profit at the level of medical coding and billing, and then Lord only knows what influences the pharmaceutical rep is bringing to bear. Right? It's kind of back to the college football thing. Maybe the doctor does want to do the right thing. This in that article I read, there was an acknowledgement of sort of wanting to do the right thing, and almost kind of in an indirect way explaining why that's not really even possible. And then meanwhile, that is an acknowledgement of what the enemy, antithesis would say. Well, yeah, and the gospel of Paul, Saul of Tarsus from the Bible. It's like, yeah, well, maybe everybody's a good person, and you want to do the right thing. But we all know if we're on the I-40 in Arkansas, and we could be certain that the state trooper ain't around, well, of course we're all going to speed. It's like, well, wait a minute, not necessarily. I mean, that's not just a given, and it's almost to imply that if there's a short-term benefit to the individual, of course they'll do the wrong thing. Why would they do the right thing? Well, because some of us care about integrity. Some of us actually give a fuck about integrity. Now, that is to persecute oneself, because everybody getting ahead in the present society, without exception, and there's always exceptions to everything, even that statement, but there's nobody who's not getting ahead in the present system. They're all doing it through illegal, unethical, immoral, and or illegal means, period. That's the way to get ahead nowadays, is to, as quickly as possible, remove oneself, divorce oneself from their own integrity. Meanwhile, Bohemian Grove cremation of care ceremonies, anyone? Where supposedly the Republican lawmakers go to Bohemian Grove and make sacrifices to Moloch, that Moloch would remove their integrity so that they can even more effectively serve the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions. But now truthers and conspiracy theorists are going to say, well, we got to be conservative and MAGA because, look at those ridiculous, immoral, wicked, fallen Democrats. And it's a negative motivation. This is satanic ritual abuse. This is trauma-based mind control, and I will not participate. I refuse, and can't nobody make me. And again, like Jesus in the Bible, the servant is not greater than the master, right? Isn't that what he said, master? The servant is not greater than the master, and you saw what they did to me. So what do you think they're going to do to you, right? Meanwhile, I don't even call you servant anymore. Now I call you friend. So it's kind of like, hey, you're on my level now, buddy. You done attained to something, right? You've reached a higher level within yourself, a recognition of the internal bootstrapping mind, body, and spirit. And so at that point, game recognized game. See, and just like in the Bible, in an inverted way, it talks about this idea of the return of Jesus, but then it's in the framework of it externally, when really it's the resurrection of the risen Christ within, time, space, location, place. But it's this idea that Christ would come back externally, and then, people, churchgoers, checking all of these dogmatic boxes via doctrine, saying, hey, we did all of this stuff in your name. Like, why have you forsaken us? And then that spirit saying, I don't even know you, meaning you're not the same spirit I am. So I can't, like, I only recognize the authority of what I am. And what I am can't recognize any other authority, because all other authorities are lesser than what I am. See, what I am can't recognize the authority of this realm. What I am can't accept this realm's bastardized notion of justice that's based on a backwards rationalization of only being able to relate to the lack of justice. See, it's not possible. And how much of daily life is tied up in seeking to, and the damage done when individuals seek to create these things within themselves when it isn't even possible. And then, of course, the NPCs are able to follow along. Right. Kirk killing reignites worries about Judge Dan. Yeah, because everybody's we're worried. Do we care about safety, or do we not care about safety? I don't know. I can't call it. DOJ deletes studies showing domestic terrorists. Well, I mean, that's probably a good thing, or most often right wing. I don't know that the government should be studying that in the first place. But magazine, you want a civil war? Let's remember what one looks like. Yeah, it looks like poor people slaughtering each other, and getting marched around by Stonewall Jackson or whatever. Antietam. So you say you want a civil war? In the wake of the murder of Charlie Kirk, Republican elected officials and members of the Trump administration have led or followed denizens of right-wing social media in using the language of civil war to respond to what they immediately deemed an attack by the radical left. President Trump has kept up a steady drumbeat of blaming the radical left lunatics as Kirk's real killers. Also, so that's who's guilty for this psyop in this event is the entirety of so-called left-wing lunatics. And I don't know. I told you all this when I was in Arkansas, when I was still sick, and I was really going through it. That I could tell that something had changed in their brains when Biden was still president, and they were looking up there in the Ozarks where my family lives now. There's no Democrats or left-wing people really. And if they are, they're not my age, certainly. And these people are looking for anything that doesn't check the boxes of what they think MAGA looks like. And everywhere I went, I could tell they were like, oh, that's one of them. They're looking for it. And it's like, we got one. We spotted it. I had to get the fuck out of there, dude. It was weird, man. And now we're seeing it, not that much later. It's real, As I look at where my family's moved to, it's just like, what is wrong with you people? It's just bizarre. Because not that it's much better, but my home county's not like that. As he expects the country to forget his own. Well, and at this point, it's neither here nor there if a person is felony convicted. So that's a non-starter. As he expects that's just propaganda. That's just straight up propaganda. As he expects the country to forget his own felony conviction. No, it's already memory hold. That's already not in the zeitgeist. That's neither here nor there at this point. I don't think even the so-called left is even promoting him at the level of being a convicted felon. The bloom has been off that rose for quite some time already. That got memory hold like a week later. That was just for the purposes of the election. His pardoning of 1,500 convicted members of an insurrectionary mob that violently blah blah blah. I can't be bothered to care about January the 6th. I just don't care. All the while, the president's deputy chief of staff, Stephen Miller, spread vicious propaganda about a vast conspiracy of people working in child services as hospital nurses and teachers who have been deeply and violently radicalized. Well, that's probably true. A ministry of propaganda and truth, by definition, needs no evidence. It exploits the shock of events for constant partisan revitalization and the sharpening of conceptions of the enemy who must be destroyed. And that's the thing about an enemy that must be destroyed, because to actually examine all of this honestly is to say, well, clearly Benton there's no love lost for the so-called right, and I certainly would never freely choose to identify with left or right. But if you made me choose, I'm never choosing Republican, ever. So if you made me choose and I have to choose, I'm never going Republican, because just like I'm never going to use the big banks again, I saw what Bush Cheney did. And I saw America become the laughingstock of the world under 2 terms of Republicans. So after going through that, sorry, can't ever align myself with that. And so if you're going to make me choose one of the two, it's never going to be Republicans. And meanwhile, it's a negative political motivation. It's not based on one side or the other is better. It's based on the hatred of one of the two sides. And so how do truthers not realize that they're falling into this trap of, well, oh, just blame everything bad on the Democrats? But let me ask you this. Is it possible to have two seemingly opposing forces at the level of intellectual ideas and debate, and depending on one's perspective, the other side has 0 points? Is that possible? Is it possible that Democrats have 0 points? And from the other perspective, is it possible that Republicans have 0 points? It's not fucking possible. So, part of my own insanity, and it's not insanity, but for a lot of people, it probably seems like insanity, is, yeah, I will examine both so-called sides, and both of them make points in a context. Oh my God, what a controversy. Can you believe he's admitting that Democrats make some points? Yeah, they do. Guess what? So do Republicans. I hate to break it to you. It's called rhetoric. They have to make valid points. Otherwise, the thing doesn't work. You can't have left and right in seeming opposition while simultaneously they work together to ruin the lives of the people and let rich people grow ever richer every new moment into perpetuity, which is the function of the economy, and it never fails to achieve its purpose in any new moment. You can't have that structure otherwise. It's not possible. They have to both have valid points. But the psychology of the individual who, via a negative means, is made to identify with one side over the other, so-called, because of a negative motivation away from the other, and blame the other for everything that, in fact, we know is originating from the hearts and minds of the American people, because it's the hearts and minds of the American people that are accepting the fact that Republicans and Democrats work in concert to make rich people richer every new moment into perpetuity in service of their employers, which are banks and corporations. And banks and corporations work for Satan and antithesis and everything evil, right? So if I'm able to conceptualize and convey all of this to people, that same consciousness has to look at Democrats and say, well, yes, they have some points. And it has to look at Republicans and say, yes, they have some points. And this society will not allow that. And the schism in the psyche of individual Americans can't deal with that. If you, the listener, have a psychological schism at the level of the left-right paradigm, you can't psychologically deal with somebody like me who will acknowledge a point on the side of the left, and here's another point on the side of the right. The psychological schism can't allow that. And that's why when I was in the Ozarks, they could tell that about me, and they can't be around it, because that is the Civil War, is when just people will not allow it. And as soon as they spot it, they're going to start physically attacking it. And I was physically attacked at a certain point, because I was doing a live stream and in the back of this old abandoned gas station. And I guess I'm so loud, the lady next door heard me and called up her convicted felon, meth head on steroids, and called him down there to pretend to try to be my friend. Hey, man, you got a phone I can use? Oh, yeah, let me hand my phone over to you. Are you crazy? Right. Hey, man, I need to make a phone call. Can I use your phone? I'm just looking at the guy. Like, what is this? It's craziness. And then, of course, the truth comes out. Then he wants to get into it with me. And it's just a hatred of the other. Anything that doesn't align with the us or the in group, that is easily identifiable as the out group, because the in group must prove itself to be a member of the in group through an overt assertive performance, which is collectivism. That is, the left wing has its version of that, and right wing has its version of that, right? And right wing, in some ways, historically, has probably been done a little more through, maybe more recently through religion, and Christianity, and the left, it's more what, like, oh well, we love people and we care about the working class, and but which isn't even true at all. They don't give a fuck. Of course they don't. They can't simultaneously serve banks, corporations, and all of this evil nonsense and simultaneously give a fuck about the poor. That's also not possible. See? Those are two things that are at cross purposes. They're mutually exclusive. See? And the fact that this is not obvious to the majority of the populace, it proves there's no such thing as common sense, and it certainly shows that individuals are simply not thinking for themselves. Critical thinking is not a thing, right? It's just simply not. It's not on the menu, right? It's just simply not on the menu. So anyway. And if you really want to blow somebody's mind, I saw in this article, if somebody's really, thinks that the Confederacy was just immoral because it was racist or whatever, if you really want to blow their mind, if they bring up Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson, or you can bring them up, and then you can wait till they say, oh, those racist Confederate generals, and I'll say, what do you mean those? You talking about those American war heroes? They fought with the United States in the war against Mexico, in the U.S. Mexican American War. They were both literally United States military war heroes. So it's like, what are you talking about? Do people even know that or care? Right? I don't think they do. It's memory hold. And how come I'm able to convey all of this? Driver crashes car into FBI office gate in Pittsburgh. Blah, blah, blah. America's most inbred family at center of new fraud probe. That's the Whitakers. That creep Mark Leda, publicized them. He raised 3 Marines. His wife is American. The U.S. wants to deport him. I mean, again, I can't be bothered to care. Now, am I in favor of that? No. Do I give a fuck? No, I don't. But I wouldn't be involved. If you ask me, should he be allowed to stay? Yeah, let's keep him. He sounds like a decent fella. Why not? But if they kick him out of the country, yeah, that sucks. But whatever. Why'd they let him in the first place? Why'd they let his sons go join the Marines? I guess they were born here. But although that's another dirty little secret, is people are absolutely allowed to come here and serve in the military. The military has needed warm bodies for so long. It's an open secret. Oh yeah, come here from another country and serve in the military. That's completely fine. Come on down. You're the next contestant on the dystopia is just getting warmed up. Dystopian bathroom forcing users to watch ad to get toilet paper. Japan political party to install AI leader. I mean, why not? Family calls for an independent autopsy after black Mississippi student found hanging in a tree. And this is just off the charts, man. This is just off the charts. 95-year-old dementia patient charged with murder after beating Holocaust survivor to death. America loves cocaine again. Mexico's new drug king cashes in. As jobs disappear, Fed returns to rate cuts. And see, this is all they care about. The rich folks care about how cheap can we borrow money? Can we get free money at the backing of the full faith and credit of the American taxpayer? Right. Because remember, kids, rich people don't know who they are if their wealth doesn't increase in each new moment. They go into existential crisis and they go into shock. Right. And that's way more important than if your family has access to proper health care, food, and is able to buy a home, or now look at all of the body cam video and the true crime interrogation videos, because now elderly parents are still living with their 45-year-old kids or whatever, and the kids are on fucking God knows what. They're addicted to whatever drugs. They're playing video games all day. They're scamming Social Security, right? This is your America, kids. And I don't mean you're a kid. I'm calling myself old, really. But so is the audience. Um, Scientists say being too skinny might kill you quicker than obesity. That's probably true, actually. Um, and in fact, what did we see when Benton came very close to death? His body weight dropped to damn near 100 pounds. So yeah, I believe it. And in fact, in a lot of cases, that's probably with a lot of illnesses. That is, yeah, right before the person dies, they lose an insane amount of weight. Inside a high security vault for storing valuables for ultra rich. Child sex dolls sold on Facebook. Uh, who would even want to be a part of this at this point? But then remember, this is the system that my mom is telling me that and she's implying on some level that I'm a failure because I'm not able to, I can't prove that I'm living a good, fulfilling, enjoyable life in the context of what this place tells me it is. And what I would say is anybody that thinks this is real, anybody who thinks all of this is completely real and is not accounting for the waking dream surrealistic aspects of unreality, that is to be an insane person. That is to be an insane person. I mean, it really is. When it says here, study fatty foods scramble memory just days later. High fat diets make brain forget faster. And I bet you if I read this, it's going to end up being, it's going to be high fat plus sugar. I almost guarantee, because here's what they show you. That's not high fat. If you see what's on the screen, that's high fat plus sugar, plus ultra processed refined carbohydrates. That's not high fat. I can eat high fat without the processed sugars and carbs, or just sugars. I can eat that all day long, and it's going to be good for my brain. So it's not a high fat diet. It's a high fat, high sugar, high processed carbohydrate diet. So if you started seeing this promotion of the so-called sugar diet, when you would see the thumbnail, they would show you this, right? That's not the sugar diet. That's high fat plus sugar. The sugar diet is high sugar, no fat. It's a low fat diet. It's not a high sugar, high fat diet. And immediately people started saying, oh, well, I don't like sweets, and you can't tell me that eating sweets is a diet. Nobody thinks sweets, it means lemon heads and fucking nerds, which even like Skittles has some fat in it, right? It's got oil in it, but it's still not high fat. Like, people don't even know details. Your average person has almost no ability to track details. All they hear is high fat has to mean sweets. It's like, no, it doesn't mean a donut, right? An avocado is high fat. An egg yolk is high fat in a way compared to the total weight of the egg yolk. There's lots of foods that are high fat. Bacon is high fat, has no carbs, has no sugar. What are you talking about? In fact, people talk about keto. Keto is 80% fat, 20% protein. That's bacon. Bacon is 80% fat and 20% protein. But you hear a high-fat diet, and it's like, oh, sweets. Well, or a pound of bacon. It says here, in the experiment, fruit flies were given either a normal diet or one laced with coconut oil. Oh, so you're taking a normal diet, which means sugar and processed foods, and then in another version, we're adding coconut oil. That's roughly like a person getting a fifth of their calories from added fats. Because remember, there's already fats in the diet. They're adding more fat to what's already a bullshit diet. See, the system is just making things up at this point. It's just making shit up, and people are running around repeating it. And how come Benton just immediately knows this just from seeing the headline? I'm like, oh, okay, well, I know what lies that is, obviously. And it probably introduces plaque into the brain or something. I think that's probably the problem with memory. Meanwhile, is this probably not the reason why the diet they want you eating? Not they, but the system is promoting, the standard American diet. It's probably some version of, well, we need these people to not have a memory. So here's the goy slop. Crazy, man. This shit is nuts, dude. Pop culture enters its virgin era again. And the first thing I see is four dudes and one chick, and she's got her ass out. So this is just pop culture enters its virgin phase, and the first thing I see is a ass. Okay, sure, whatever. She's half naked. Here's your virgin. I don't know, man. If that's the virgin you promised to a Muslim, you know what he's gonna say? He's gonna say, "I'm gonna need to see the receipts on that one, partner." He said, I'm gonna need to see the receipt on that one." He might not want 76 of that. Now he would take 76 of that. He's gonna be like, "Well, I'm not accepting that that's a virgin." Meanwhile, and from the female perspective, so one of the hosts, Karen Plum, an executive producer on Are You My First, said the show was a zeitgeisty attempt to shine a light on adult virginity without judgment. "I'm not surprised people are virgins," she said in a recent interview. "They're scared of sex, they're scared of intimacy, and they're scared of talking to people." And that's true. There is a minority of people who, you know, probably are just like freaked out by it. And they tried to do it to Gen X, remember, with the whole AIDS scare. And in fact, you know, I feel pretty good about my experiences, but it probably cut my young experiences in half. Most likely, I would have had double the experiences I had, but it was all in the context of these fears around AIDS and HIV, right? And safe sex. It says here, Carter Sherman, the author of The Second Coming, Sex and the Next Generation's Fight Over Its Future, said such apprehensions are markers of the so-called sex recession, which is not even a thing, and I'll tell you why in a minute, that has seized the American imagination. And it's not because young people are not horny. They're just profoundly anxious, Ms. Sherman said. They put so much weight on sex and laden it with all these meanings that it's not fun to pursue. Well, but let's not forget from the female perspective, on some level, they have no choice but to compete for Chad. So they're still banging Chad. It's just so now you've got a group of 20 women, and you got 3 Chads, right? And the women are not they're all banging the 3 Chads, and then they're trying to get impregnated. And meanwhile, they think that they're going to get a relationship with Chad, and then they find out, oh, wait a minute, yet another situationship. Where it's actually because they're so fearful about Chad, and they know he has options. They won't have the "what are we" conversation, and then eventually they have to have it. They press Chad for a relationship, and they find out that, oh, it was a situationship, right? Because meanwhile, when they meet some provider, so-called simp type of guy, you know, they withhold sex, and it's immediately like, you know, he's got to prove himself. You know, prove your love. You got to prove your love. But Chad first night gets it, right? Because they have to compete for Chad. It's not up to them. They don't have a choice. No choice but to compete for Chad. Now, I feel bad for the ladies. They don't have a choice. By the way, that ain't me. I'm definitely not Chad, but that's okay. Chad Light's not so bad. It's decent. Because every once in a while I'm in the store or whatever, and there's Chad, and I'm like, yeah, ain't nobody mistaking us for each other. There's Chad, and here's Chad Light. So have a nice day. No problem. I barely squeaked into that, you know, perhaps top 20% of men who are just able to, you know, uh, get some broads without being turned into a simp or a. I don't like the term cuck, but you know, it is what it is at this point. And you remember I went through this whole thing about the 50s. I went on my whole jag about the 50s the other day, and this is all birthed out of the 50s and then into the, what they call the 60s, which is really the 70s. The sexual revolution, and that was when women began to mimic male sexual behavior. You're not going to tell me that, oh, now I'm supposed to accept that these women are virgins. No, they don't count when Chad comes over and knocks it out of the park, and then they never end up in a relationship. That doesn't add to the body count. So, yeah, they're virgins. Okay. But yeah, are some of them neurotic and anxiety, have enough anxiety that they just are like, fuck this, we're not dealing with it? Yeah, that's a thing. Absolutely it is. Yeah, there's people that are that way. There's probably always been people that are that way. It's probably normal. Right. And listen to these old love songs. All the old love songs, if it's a woman point of view, it's her desperation, around, she's feeling insecure and desperate because she's met this guy that rings all her bells, and it's fireworks, and but then the male version, when he falls in love, is just kind of like he'll do whatever it takes, you know. And where has all that gone? That's gone. Now all the love songs is how she's independent, and he's got to earn her love and all of this. And the movie switched at a certain point to where the good looking popular guy, if he jumps through all the hoops, then maybe the chick will consider him, maybe, if he plays his cards right. And go look at a movie like Caddyshack, where even the loser guy, the rich kid, had a girlfriend. It was just normal for more guys. It was just normal for most of the dudes to have a girlfriend. And then you had a few, of the caddies who were just kind of more fancied themselves players, who didn't have an actual girlfriend. But then there was always at least one or two girls that wanted to be their girlfriend, and they just were holding out for maybe a better deal. Right. I'm serious. Go watch the movie and you'll see that's how it used to be. I mean, this is just complete insanity. They say, oh, it's a movie. Yeah, it's a movie based on how society was at the time. So again, why would I be foolish enough to tie my own satisfaction and enjoyment and value and my own inner meaning to what this world does and how this world presents, and my mom panicking around, and it's an existential crisis. If she chose to put faith in what I'm telling her, and I'm not asking her to, I'm just asserting what I know to be true. But if she did do that, she's imagining what she thinks it would feel like, and it freaks her the fuck out, which is fine. Who cares? And is it not part of being, and is that not why so many people are given drugs and head meds and psych meds, is to not feel that way, to be able to pretend like society is something other than what it actually is. Right. Crazy, man. I haven't been reading the comments in a while. Yeah, bacon and eggs. Well, you're going to get too much protein if you keep the whites, but if you're going to stick to an 80-20, eggs is not on the menu. But you're close there, 47. You're probably going to need to get rid of the whites. It's too much protein. And a lot of people don't know, when you go to a certain level of protein, the body actually breaks it down into sugar. That's kind of not well understood by most folks. Ascending levels of false reality. That's right, our poll. Some of y'all learn, man. Exactly, our poll. Ascending layers of false realities. Yep, that's it exactly. I am whatever you say I am. Then why wouldn't you say I am? There you go. Radio don't want to play my jam. DWS, guillotine nation never comes, brother. That never happens. Meanwhile, if the system decides that the best thing for the system is to have guillotine nation, then there will be that, and that will only ever suit the system itself. It'll only ever strengthen the system itself, and that is Kaczynskiism. That's to read and understand the writings attributed to Ted Kaczynski. And since I'm feeling froggy, guess what we're going to do now? As my phone threatens to overheat, we're going to read Industrial Society and Its Future, which even what's available on the internet, I'm going to have to go to the book. Is it an Anti-Tech Revolution? Anti-Tech Revolution, or is it in the other one? Anti-Tech Revolution PDF. Here we go. This always bears repeating, so I do want to check and see if we're actually using the earbuds for the mic. And we are not. I'm still at 100%, so we're not using the earbuds for the mic. That's disappointing. Oh, I ordered with the donos, the Amazon gift card donos. I ordered a Bluetooth lavalier mic, so that'll be here tomorrow, and I'll go pick it up the day after probably, since I go to bed so early, unless it comes early. Yeah. Were there but an Adam and an Eve left in every continent and left free, it would be better than it is now. Thomas Jefferson. That's interesting. All right. I may have downloaded the wrong PDF. Let me see. I might need to go to technological slavery. Yeah. All right. Hang on. I downloaded the wrong PDF. But hopefully y'all can hear me okay. Let me know if I'm loud enough. I mean, hard to believe I wouldn't be, but technological slavery PDF. Aha, there it is. This one's kind of hard to read because it's like pictures of the book though. Let me see if there's an actual proper version of this. Hang on. Internet Archive, maybe that's it. It's too hard to read this. It's pictures of the book. I don't want pictures of the book or scans or whatever. Now there's a .pub version, but I'm gonna have to. That would require me to download an app. I'm trying to get into all that. Oh, this has got to be it. Come the fuck on, man. Got a pretty pleased with sugar on top. Just fuck. Why is all of this necessary? I don't want to do a trial. This is just insane. Everything's a business. Can I just read the fucking thing? Is that okay? Apparently not. I mean, this is 10 minutes already. Oh, here we go. I think I found it. This is Cliff Notes. It's Cliff Notes. Oh my god. All right, I give up. We're just going to do the Industrial Society and Its Future. And whatever we get's whatever we get. If there's inaccuracies, so be it. 1995, Theodore Kaczynski, Industrial Society and Its Future. This essay first appeared in the New York Times and the Washington Post on September the 19th, 1995. It was published under the pseudonym FC for Freedom Club. The version you are reading began with the version found at some website, but has corrected a number of typos. See, they changed it, and that's what Kaczynski said. He said if you really want the real version, you got to get it from my book because they've changed it. But we're going to read the changed version because I can't deal with trying to get the real version right now. So it is what it is. The Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. They have greatly increased the life expectancy of those of us who live in, quote, advanced countries. But they have destabilized society, have made life unfulfilling, have subjected human beings to indignities, have led to widespread psychological suffering, parentheses, in the third world to physical suffering as well, and have inflicted severe damage on the natural world. Remember, Kaczynski was a big environmentalist. And I added that part, my apologies. The continued development of technology will worsen the situation. It will certainly subject human beings to greater indignities and inflict greater damage on the natural world. It will probably lead to greater social disruption and psychological suffering, and it may lead to increased physical suffering even in advanced countries. And I believe that's being seen already. The industrial technological system may survive or it may break down. Now, let me stop there. Benton's contention is that it's maintained in perpetuity at a level of collapse. It's being propped up through a breaking down. It's both things simultaneously. That's my opinion. If it survives, it may eventually achieve a low level of physical and psychological suffering, but only after passing through a long and very painful period of adjustment, and only at the cost of permanently reducing human beings and many other living organisms to engineered products and mere cogs in the social machine. And has that not come to pass? That seems to be the situation now, right? Oh, somebody emailed it to me? Well, thanks, but we're already doing it. Okay, thank you for emailing it, but we're just going to keep rolling with what we got. If the system breaks down, the consequences will still be very painful. Wait a minute, hang on. I've skipped something. The industrial technological system may survive or it may break down. If it survives, it may eventually achieve a low level of physical and psychological suffering, but only after passing through a long and very painful period of adjustment, and only at the cost of permanently reducing human beings and many other living organisms to engineered products and mere cogs in the social machine. It seems to be the case now. Furthermore, if the system survives, the consequences will be inevitable. There is no way of reforming or modifying the system so as to prevent it from depriving people of dignity and autonomy. And I would encourage people, find a notebook, write that down. Write it down. There is no way of reforming or modifying the system so as to prevent it from depriving people of dignity and autonomy. It's not possible. And the quicker people drill that into their brains, the better. If the system breaks down, the consequences will still be very painful. But the bigger, because remember, Kaczynski was advocating to make the system break down quicker. That's what he was saying would be the best thing in the long run, and I believe he's going to make the case. If the system breaks down, the consequences will still be very painful. But the bigger the system grows, the more disastrous the results of its breakdown will be. So if it is to break down, it had best break down sooner rather than later. We therefore, meaning Freedom Club, advocate a revolution against the industrial system. This revolution may or may not make use of violence. It may be sudden or it may be a relatively gradual process spanning a few decades. We can't predict any of that, but we do outline in a very general way the measures that those who hate the industrial system should take in order to prepare the way for a revolution against that form of society. This is not to be a political revolution, and which I would say is not even possible, because The prerequisite to engagement in a political process is to first seize power. Right. And the American people don't even seem to understand that they are not engaged in political process because the American people have no power. So that thus proving they're not engaged in a political process while simultaneously believing that they are, but they're not. Its object will be to overthrow not governments, but the economic and technological basis of the present society. In this article, we give attention to only some of the negative developments that have grown out of the industrial technological system. Other such developments we mention only briefly or ignore altogether. This does not mean that we regard these other developments as unimportant. For practical reasons, we have to continue our discussion to areas that have received insufficient public attention or in which we have something new to say. For example, since there are well-developed environmental and wilderness movements, we have written very little about environmental degradation or the destruction of wild nature, even though we consider these to be highly important. The psychology of modern leftism, and this was probably the main reason that Kaczynski left academia, Cal Berkeley professor. And that's my opinion. Almost everyone will agree that we live in a deeply troubled society. Mother. One of the most widespread manifestations of the craziness of our world is leftism. So this is where, again, the MAGA says, oh, well, yeah, there's problems, but it's all the left's fault. Right. One of the most widespread manifestations of the craziness of our world is leftism. So a discussion of the psychology of leftism can serve as an introduction to the discussion of the problems of modern society in general. And remember, the actual commies in America and the system itself refers to the period politically that began with Ronald Reagan as neoliberalism. So as far as the system is concerned, Ronald Reagan was a liberal. And in fact, there is no conservatism, basically. It's all liberal starting with 1980. There's no conservatism, effectively, just for the record. It's really not a thing. But what is leftism? During the first half of the 20th century, leftism could have been practically identified with socialism. Today, the movement is fragmented. Remember 1995. Today, the movement is fragmented, and it is not clear who can properly be called a leftist. And remember, leftist doesn't necessarily mean liberal. I'm just saying that this idea that conservatives are conservatives in the first place and are associated with sort of a rebuking or an antithesis of liberalism is just simply not the case, in my opinion, once again. When we speak of leftists in this article, we have in mind many socialists, collectivists, politically correct types, feminists, gay and disability activists, animal rights activists, and the like. But not everyone who is associated with one of these movements is a leftist. Exactly. What we are trying to get at in discussing leftism is not so much movement or an ideology as a psychological type, or rather a collection of related types. Thus, what we mean by leftism will emerge more clearly in the courses of our discussion. Also see paragraphs 227 to 230. In the course of our discussion of leftist psychology. Even so, our conception of leftism will remain a good deal less clear than we would wish. Hang on, I gotta check the battery level. 51%. But there doesn't seem to be any remedy for this. All we are trying to do here is indicate in a rough and approximate way the two psychological tendencies that we believe are the main driving force of modern leftism. We by no means claim to be telling the whole truth about leftist psychology. Also, our discussion is meant to apply to modern leftism only. We leave open the question of the extent to which our discussion can be applied to the leftists of the 19th and early 20th centuries. And early 20th century would have been probably USSR in particular, I'm assuming. I'm not a historian. The two psychological tendencies that underlie modern leftism we call feelings of inferiority and over-socialization. Feelings of inferiority are characteristic of modern leftism as a whole, while over-socialization is characteristic only of a certain segment of modern leftism. But this segment is highly influential. Feelings of inferiority. By feelings of inferiority, we mean to not only inferior, and this is what, well, I don't even want to get into it. We mean not only inferiority feelings in the strictest sense, but a whole spectrum of related traits. Low self esteem, feelings of powerlessness, depressive tendencies, defeatism, guilt, self hatred, etc. We argue that modern leftists tend to have some such feelings, possibly more or less repressed, and that these feelings are decisive in determining that direction of modern leftism. And I would say at a certain point in the past, you did have people who were living the Ozzie and Harriet life because that's what they were indoctrinated and told to do, and that those people did seem to be well adjusted and confident and have self esteem. And those same people, now, today's version of those people, I would say, are now low self esteem, feelings of powerlessness, depressive tendencies, defeatism, guilt, self hatred. And that's why they're on drugs, whether illicit or otherwise. That's why they're all on psych meds now. When someone interprets as derogatory almost anything that is said about him or her, in the old days they said him, now they changed it to her, but we'll go with him, I guess, or about groups with whom he identifies, we conclude that he has inferiority feelings or low self esteem. This tendency is pronounced among minority rights activists, whether or not they belong to the minority groups whose rights they defend. They are hypersensitive about the words used to, as I just showed, they are hypersensitive about the words used to designate minorities and about anything that is said concerning minorities. The terms Negro, Oriental, handicapped, or chick for an African, an Asian, a disabled person, or a woman originally had no derogatory connotation. Broad and chick were merely the feminine equivalents of guy, dude, or fellow. The negative connotations have been attached to these terms by the activists themselves. Some animal rights activists have gone so far as to reject the word pet and insist on its replacement as by animal companion. This is probably a little outdated. Leftist anthropologists, leftish, see, that's a mistake. Leftist anthropologists go to great lengths to avoid saying anything about primitive peoples that could conceivably be interpreted as negative. They want to replace the word primitive by non-literate. They seem almost paranoid about anything that might suggest that any primitive culture is inferior to our own. We do not mean to imply that primitive cultures are inferior to ours. We merely point out the hypersensitivity of leftist, I guess he does mean leftish anthropologists. That's a kind of an awkward term. Those who are most sensitive about politically incorrect terminology are not the average black ghetto dweller, Asian immigrant, abused woman, or disabled person, but a minority of activists, many of whom do not even belong to any oppressed group, but come from privileged strata of society. And this is the whole idea of being offended on behalf of other groups. Political correctness has its stronghold among university professors who have secure employment with comfortable salaries. That's called privilege. And the majority of whom are heterosexual white males from middle to upper middle class families. That's no longer the case, but it's still fairly common. Many leftists have an intense identification with the problems of groups that have an image of being weak, women, defeated, American Indians, repellent, homosexuals, and that's no longer the case. Remember, Trump's top man on the economy is a homosexual or otherwise inferior. The leftists themselves feel that these groups are inferior. They would never admit to themselves that they have such feelings, but it is precisely because they do see these groups as inferior that they identify with their problem. We do not mean to suggest that women, Indians, etc. are inferior. We are only making a point about leftist psychology. Feminists are desperately anxious to prove that women are as strong and as capable as men. Clearly, they are nagged by a fear that women may not be as strong and as capable as men. Well, which is why we now see males, which is now we see entire generations of males that never become men and never leave the nest, so that women are outperforming males. So that's no longer an issue because women are doing better than males now. They're outperforming males. So see, 95 to 2025, that's just not an issue anymore. In fact, in a lot of ways, women are kicking the shit out of men of the same age. Leftists tend to hate anything that has an image of being strong, good, and successful. They hate America, and this is the biblical notion of all they that hate God love death. Leftists tend to hate anything that has an image of being strong, good, and successful. Again, that which I am, right? Supreme authority, right? Life itself, the source of life itself. They hate America. They hate Western civilization. They hate white males. They hate rationality. The reasons that leftists give for hating the West, etc., clearly do not correspond with their real motives. They say they hate the West because it is warlike, imperialistic, sexist, ethnocentric, and so forth. But where these same faults appear in socialist countries or in primitive cultures, the leftist finds excuses for them, or at best he grudgingly admits that they exist, whereas he enthusiastically, and I fall victim to some of this. This is me to some extent. Now, I'm willing to acknowledge it in other cultures, but I'm guilty of some of this, I will admit. But where these same faults appear in socialist countries or in primitive cultures, the leftist finds excuses for them, or at best he grudgingly admits that they exist, whereas he enthusiastically points out and often greatly exaggerates these faults where they appear in Western civilization. Thus, it is clear that these faults are not the leftist real motive for hating America and the West. He hates America. See, anyway, it gets quite complicated. He hates America and the West because they are strong and successful, which is no longer the case. See, that's no longer the case. And a lot of the Trumpism is playing on the people who think they're conservatives, even while they're not performing whatever they think conservatism might be. They're not actually embodying what they believe and think they know conservatism to be. But that's the whole thing with Trump, is the idea of it's clearly not a thing. It's this idea of reinstalling it, right? Which is not going to happen. It might happen in the short term. Words like self-confidence, and these are all my opinions. Words like self-confidence, self-reliance, initiative, enterprise, optimism, etc., play little role in the liberal and leftist vocabulary. And is that not what happened when the infrastructure was being built up? When the system itself, in service of rich people and antithesis, needed to build up society, it did it through, this promotion of self-reliance and individualism. Well, and as soon as the system needed something else to be performed, it switched. The left, and then we have what's called neoliberalism, which I don't even really agree that that's what we have, but that's what the system claims it is. That's just I don't agree, but I'm free to disagree. The leftist is anti-individualistic, pro-collectivist. He wants society to solve everyone's problems for them, satisfy everyone's needs for them, take care of them. He is not the sort of person who has an inner sense of confidence in his ability to solve his own problems and satisfy his own needs. And remember, what I am can never lack the ability to do all of that, at least in specific contexts. The leftist is antagonistic to the concept of competition because deep inside he feels like a loser. Art forms that appeal to modern leftish intellectuals tend to focus on sordidness, defeat, and despair, or else they take on an orgiastic tone, throwing off rational control as if there were no hope of accomplishing anything through rational calculation, and all that was left was to immerse oneself in the sensations of the moment. Modern leftist philosophers tend to dismiss reason, science, and objective reality, and to insist that everything is culturally relative. And that's a muddying of the waters. It is true that one can ask serious questions about the foundations of scientific knowledge and about how, if at all, the concept of objective reality can be defined. But it is obvious that modern leftist philosophers are not simply cool-headed logicians systematically analyzing the foundations of knowledge. They are deeply involved emotionally in their attack on truth and reality. And now we're starting to see the right do that through Charlie Kirk. The right is now performing this through Charlie Kirk. They attack these concepts because of their own psychological needs. So at the end of the day, it's going to be an entire nation that can properly be described this way. They attack these concepts because of their own psychological needs. For one thing, their attack is an outlet for hostility, and to the extent that it is successful, it satisfies the drive for power. More importantly, the leftist hate science and rationality because they classify certain beliefs as true, i.e., successful, superior, and other beliefs as false, i.e., failed, inferior. And that brings us to real world effectiveness, or the lack thereof. The leftist feelings of inferiority run so deep that he cannot tolerate any classification of some things as successful or superior and other things as failed or inferior. This also underlies the rejection by many leftists of the concept. See, I don't suffer from this, from the concept of mental illness and the utility of IQ tests. Leftists are antagonistic to genetic explanations of human abilities or behavior because such explanations tend to make some persons appear superior or inferior to others. Leftists prefer to give society the credit or blame for an individual's ability or lack of it. Leftists prefer to give society the credit or blame for an individual's ability or lack of it. Thus, if a person is inferior, it is not his fault, but society's, because he has not been brought up properly. And that was the whole George Floyd thing. And that was not well understood by conservatives, so-called. The left really believes that George Floyd was not at fault for his lot in life because society failed him. Because of what? Intersectionality, poverty, his race, his level of education, his resources that he had access to. That caused the problems, not George Floyd's choices. And it's debatable. I'm not asserting that that's the case. I'm saying that leftists believe that, and so-called conservatives just say, well, it's a moral failure. And in fact, being from Arkansas, I can tell you that people from that part of the country, the middle part of the country, they bring everything to a puritanical, biblical notion of it's a moral failing, whether that's poverty, ignorance, lack of education, whatever it is, it's all a lack of morality. Where for the leftists, it's, well, society did not give them the tools in order to succeed. Clearly, it's debatable. See, and to then just take all humans and to put them into one of two boxes is then to remove my ability to compare and contrast and to say, well, yeah, to look at it one way has validity in a certain context, and to look at it another way has validity in a certain context. Clearly, if George Floyd performs as a criminal in a nation of laws, would he not be convicted of crimes and go to prison? If they're going to have a nation of laws. But simultaneously, I'm free to say, well, it's probably more likely that he fell into criminality because he was not properly incentivized and supported in the environment in which he was socialized, his educational opportunities, right? The local community, intact homes, right? Economic disadvantage. It's debatable. Whereas one side of the so-called left-right paradigm says, well, it was his own individual moral failing. And the other side would say, well, it's society's fault for setting him up for failure. And I would say both are true in their own ways, in my opinion, meaning if we're going to punish actual criminals, and we meaning society, then if people understand that, yes, if they fuck up, they might end up in the penitentiary, but then at the same time, can't society say, look, there's 15-year-old males with testosterone committing crimes, do they have to go to the penitentiary? Right. Or can society find a way to first try to support and prevent them going to prison? And then if they run afoul of the law, why can't there be proper programs to attempt to rehabilitate them and step by step reintroduce them into society? Right. And again, there would be arguments on both sides, whereas the repressive puritanical culture of the middle part of the country says lock them away and lock them up and throw away the key. And increasingly, the more leftist people say, well, it ain't their fault, so no bail, and so just let them run loose in society. And when they get arrested for violent crime after violent crime after violent crime, like we see in Portland and Seattle, and not so much in California, believe it or not, people, San Francisco to some extent. I would argue LA, yeah, it happens, but it really, I would look at Portland and Seattle as the vanguard of this overall. Uh, uh, to just allow them to rape and pillage and run roughshod over the populace and to prey upon the weak and defenseless, right? And I would say a mixture of the two, where we treat, society meets them at the level of, hey, these are human beings, and then seeks to rehabilitate them. And then if that proves to fail, then perhaps they will need to be separated from society, right? But not to do what Arkansas and Texas and Oklahoma and Mississippi will do, which is to, the first time they commit a serious offense, it's off to the penitentiary, and now for the rest of their life they're in a criminal justice system that they will most likely never escape, even if they try really hard. And I'm against that. And that's why I can't ever be a so-called conservative. It's morally fucking repugnant to curse a young person into a system of punishment via being a felon and having to go through parole and probation and subjected to who knows what levels of psychological damage in the penitentiary, where strong predators will be able to prey on them. And then we know at a certain point they're going to be reintroduced into society, right? So why wouldn't society be incentivized to, hey, maybe rehabilitate these people, support them, give them resources, and then if they show over time they're simply unable, incapable, and unwilling to engage with their own process of rehabilitation while being assisted and not being treated like pieces of trash, right? As if they have no redeemable human qualities at all. Because remember, what would Jesus do, right? And then to say, well, they're probably getting out of prison anyway, right? If a person goes to the pen on a 25-year-old sentence, if they're sentenced to 25 years at age 18, and then they're paroled in 12 years, right? But now they're in a criminal justice system that they can never escape because, of a Kafka-esque system of, set up to fail through the various mechanisms and the fact that everything's a business, including all of this machinery. And in fact, profits are made and people earn their salaries by keeping individuals ensnared in this Kafka-esque machinery. And that's morally wrong, right? And so how does society reconcile all of this simultaneously? Well, it doesn't, because society lacks the ability to reconcile all of that because of the low level of the individuals spiritually within themselves, mind, body, and spirit. It's not good enough. So until individuals do better within themselves, what I'm speaking of is simply impossible. So you will see the repressive, barbaric cultures, like where my accent is from, people will just say, yeah, lock them up, throw away the key, and just moving on to the next thing. And I don't believe in that. But I also don't believe in the Portland, Seattle model of just, let them do whatever they're going to do, and then no bail, and just let them do what they're going to do, and then just release them to the streets, with no support. Release them to the streets where they're homeless and drugs are effectively free, and let them camp out on the sidewalk and, give them the minority of things they need to not die in the short term. And then eventually they're going to, what's going to happen? They're going to die a death of despair. How is that ever, how's that ever moral? It can't be moral. Just like, in my view, it's not moral to throw them away and lock them up and throw away the key. Although some people, are so provably beyond, plausibly being able to reform themselves, or let them reform themselves in the penitentiary. Some of them need to do 50 years, and then it's like, hey, they're 68 years old. Well, welcome back, but we'll send you right back if you don't prove you've rehabilitated yourself. But not to do it under no. And then, I don't know if people realize this. In most of the world, you can't put somebody in prison for longer than 35 years, no matter what they do. I mean, do Americans even know that? In most of the world, at least the Western world, no matter what the crime is, you cannot incarcerate somebody for more than 35 years, period, end of story. Except in perhaps very special cases. Right. So, by that standard, let's say somebody serves 35 years. Well, okay. Can they be supported within the institution and granted access to the tools that would, but they are going to have to manage that process. The system can't rehabilitate them. See, the system can say, here's the tools. And just like when I went into truck driving, there's still, the system itself is going to provide obstacles, and that's just how it is. And it's probably nothing that we can be done. And that's because of the fallen level of the individual. And I know I'm preaching now, but I got to go anyway because the phone's overheating. And I'm getting hungry. And it's been probably 3 hours. 2 hours exactly. But anyway, I'll hang out for a minute and then we'll get out of here. Give me a second. If anybody feels like supporting whatever in the world this is, feel free. If not, thanks. Appreciate it. Thank you, Machine Lies. Much appreciated, sir. And, I know Machine Lies has a part of his brain that, whether or not he agrees with what I'm asserting, he's at least able to follow along and then presumably would have an ability to give his own take and to sort of take the ball and run with it. And that's what society is lacking, I would assert. It's lacking that ability for people to conceptualize and to critically think their way through things, right? Meanwhile, if people understand that to grow up in certain parts of the country is to be subjected to a criminal justice system, that's a very repressive and oppressive, what's the solution for that? And probably it's for those communities themselves to take ownership of it. And that's what that's where the left will affirm. And Kaczynski, I'm pretty sure, is going to make the case that that's how the left makes the case that they, in fact, consider these groups to be inferior, because it's never put forth to let them solve their own problems. To say, hey, here you go. White boys who commit serious crimes are going to go off to the penitentiary with the blacks, in the case of Arkansas, and we're going to let them figure it the fuck out. But then it's this idea that if it's happening disproportionately to people of color, so-called, then can there be some sort of faith and trust placed in those communities to solve their own problems? And what we see with actual leftists is they don't believe those groups have the capacity to solve their own problems, which is to treat them as if they're children. So in some way, places like Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi are superior in a way, because they at least account for the fact that, yeah, maybe these people can solve their own problems. Yeah, I said these people. I grew up with those people in Arkansas. I went to school with them. I went to church with them. I lived in the community with them. I will call them these people all I want. And in fact, that was that same thing in a way, culturally. That's why I say I'm half black culturally. It's a joke, but it's not entirely. I'll never know what that is to be that, but I have some framework. I have some way to relate to the cultural markers in a way. Like, I'm able to relate to at least the cultural anthropological side of it sociologically. I'll never be able to speak to the experience clearly, but in some ways it's to say, yes, Benton is from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, which is now 75% black, and the county is majority black. And is there some capacity for these people to solve their own problem? Of course there is, because that's to treat them as if they're the same as what I am, right? While simultaneously recognizing that, I can certainly go to places where the white folks are doing just as bad or worse. See? And that's the dirty little secret of the white Southerner is this notion of they have to be better, right? They have to be better solely based on these characteristics of their birth. And it's like, well, wait a minute. What is being shown through the actions is not the case. And then if we go back to, and I know Machine Lies is going to appreciate this, if we go back to areas like, Greenwood, Tulsa, and, these ideas of these Black Wall Streets, in fact, especially amongst groups considered to be middle class, you had lots of areas in this country, especially in the Deep South, where the local blacks were outperforming the whites in the 50s, in the 60s. At what? Education, economics, and business, right? While simultaneously, arguably, being held back from certain opportunities. But society being structured in such a way where they were able to, they were free to solve their own problems or not create their own problems. And what we saw was, in the case of Greenwood, Tulsa, if you go official fiction, the whites got so jealous and envious of the so-called Black Wall Street that they rose up and physically attacked Black Wall Street and even flew up into the air in airplanes and dropped incendiary bombs onto portions of the city. That's official fiction, folks. Meaning, did it happen? I don't know. I wasn't there, but that's the part of the official record. And is that even acknowledged today? Right? Does anybody even really know about that? So Greenwood, Tulsa. Let me Google that. 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, devastation. A white mob directed by government officials attacked the community in 1921, destroying homes and businesses and resulting in hundreds of deaths and thousands becoming homeless. Lack of accountability. No one has been held accountable or paid reparations for the destruction and loss of life. Meanwhile, I'm in LA. What was that Battle of LA? Right? Wasn't that certain groups persecuting other groups, the Zoot Suiters and all of that? I'm not from here, so I don't really want to speak to that, but isn't that part of the history of this city? And do y'all remember this guy who, well, wait a minute. I'm trying to remember. Something happened recently. Anyway, I don't even want to get into it, but I got to it's been cool, man. LA's tolerant enough. The people walking by hearing me hooping and hollering haven't, they haven't done anything to me yet. So hopefully they won't. Thanks for watching. Feel free to donate. Thank y'all for all the likes. And if anybody feels like commenting on the video afterwards, maybe I won't delete it. Ha ha ha. But again, if anybody feels like donating, it's in the description. If not, no worries. Bye.